My name is Lila, I'm 26 years old, and my sister's cruel accusation at her engagement nearly destroyed me. It was there, amidst the celebration, that she hissed, "You'll steal my fiancé too." A venomous jab that cut deep, shattering my confidence in front of everyone. The pain of her words lingered, a wound that threatened to unravel my world, until her boss, my boyfriend, walked me out and shamed her regret. Before I reveal how I turned the tables on her betrayal, share where you're watching from in the comments, like if you've faced sibling rivalry, and subscribe for more tales of victory. Let's go back to where this feud took root, a tension that sparked my journey to reclaim my worth against her dominance, setting the stage for a fight I never saw coming in the heart of Chicago. The tension that sparked my journey to reclaim my worth took root early in our bond, a time when the Chicago skyline shimmered with promise and our lakefront apartment hummed with the shared dreams of sisterhood. That feud I hinted at began long before the harsh words at Clara's engagement, back when her affection for me was a warm embrace I held dear, a bond that defined my youth. We were inseparable then, two sisters navigating the Windy City's chaos, our laughter filling our parents' cozy North Side home with the scent of Mom's fresh bread and the soft strum of Dad's guitar. Clara, 5 years my senior, would braid my hair on lazy Sundays, her gentle hands a comfort as we watched the lake's waves crash against the shore from our balcony, her stories of college life inspiring me. I felt invincible with her by my side, a cherished part of our family, until her engagement to Tony unraveled everything. A shift that planted the seeds of a grudge I couldn't foresee, altering our path forever. It started over the first few years, a gradual drift that crept in like the fog rolling off Lake Michigan, triggered by Tony's sudden departure. Clara and Tony, both 20 at the time, had been the golden couple, their engagement a whirlwind of joy that filled our lakefront apartment with plans and laughter, his easy smile and her radiant giggles a perfect match. I was 16, immersed in my studies and art, when Tony began showing me attention, small gestures at first, like praising my sketches during family dinners, or asking about my school projects with a curious glint in his eye. His interest deepened, and one evening, as we helped Clara plan her wedding near the Adler Planetarium, he pulled me aside, his voice low and earnest, confessing he liked me more than her. Horrified, I rejected him outright, my heart pounding as I explained my moral duty to my sister, our sacred bond, and my commitment to focusing on education over romance. He broke off the engagement days later, blaming his feelings for me, leaving Clara devastated and me grappling with guilt. A rift tearing through our family as the Chicago winds whispered my shame. Her affection waned after Tony's breakup, a silence that deepened over the next few months, casting a shadow over our once close relationship. Clara's warmth vanished, her visits to our lakefront apartment becoming rare, her smiles replaced by a distant stare that chilled me to the core. One autumn evening, as leaves crunched underfoot on a family walk near Lincoln Park, she barely acknowledged my high school art award, her silence a stark contrast to the cheers from our parents and the rustling trees around us. The distance eroded my trust in our family bond, a quiet wound that festered as I replayed Tony's confession and my rejection, wondering if she blamed me despite my innocence, her coldness a barrier I couldn't breach. The Chicago skyline, once a source of inspiration, now felt like a mirror to my isolation, its towering lights mocking my solitude as I struggled to understand her growing resentment. Ignoring my milestones deepened my isolation as time passed, a rejection that stung with each overlooked achievement, widening the gap between us. I'd always shared my dreams of becoming a designer with Clara, who'd once nodded with pride during our late-night talks, until Tony's exit changed her. When I won a regional art competition at 17, a proud moment displayed in a local gallery with my name in bold letters, She sent a curt text, "Nice job," instead of attending, her absence a silent judgment that echoed in the empty room. My first solo exhibit, a year later, held in a small Wicker Park space filled with vibrant colors and curious onlookers, drew a crowd, but Clara stayed home, citing work. Her disregard a blow that left me standing alone among my creations. The isolation grew, my hands trembling as I adjusted the frames. The Chicago skyline a lonely backdrop through the gallery windows. I retreated to my sketchbook, pouring my hurt into bold designs, feeling the weight of her disinterest push me further from the sister I once adored, a resolve slowly forming to forge my own path away from her shadow. Parental bias strained our sibling dynamic over the next few seasons, a subtle favoritism that widened the emotional chasm between us. Our parents, loving but oblivious to the undercurrents, often praised Clara's stability, her new job at a marketing firm, her engagement to Ethan, while my creative pursuits received cautious, half-hearted nods. One winter night, during a family dinner in our lakefront apartment, Dad toasted Clara's promotion with a warm grin, the clink of glasses filling the air, but when I mentioned a design internship with a local studio, he shrugged. "That's nice, but it's not secure like Clara's path." Mom echoed this, suggesting I follow her sister's lead, their bias a quiet sting that fueled my insecurity as the fireplace crackled. Clara's smug glances during these moments deepened the divide, and I felt the family tilt toward her, my trust in their support eroding under the weight of their preference. The city's winter winds rattled the windows, amplifying my sense of being sidelined, and I started imagining a life where her shadow didn't define me, a quiet strength taking shape in those cold, lonely nights. Tony's lingering presence haunted our family gatherings, a ghost that fueled Clara's resentment and kept the wound fresh. After the breakup, he'd occasionally appear at distant events, weddings, reunions, his polite nods to me a reminder of his confession that still echoed in my mind. One spring afternoon, at a picnic near the Adler Planetarium, Clara stiffened when he greeted me with a friendly wave, her eyes narrowing as she pulled him aside, their whispers a barrier I couldn't cross. I felt the weight of her suspicion, my rejection of Tony replaying in my thoughts, and her cold shoulder grew more pronounced with each encounter. The hurt piled up, my confidence fraying as I watched her shun me, and I began spending more time in my room, sketching designs to escape her growing distance, the lakefront's beauty overshadowed by her unresolved anger. The city's spring breeze carried her resentment, and I sensed a rebellion stirring within, a determination to prove my worth beyond her narrative of blame. James's entry into my life brought a new light over the next few months, a contrast to Clara's darkening shadow. We met at a design workshop in the Loop, his quiet confidence drawing me in with his thoughtful critiques, and soon our dates along the Chicago River became a refuge from my turmoil. He encouraged my art, attending my exhibits with genuine praise, a support Clara never extended, his presence a balm to my wounded spirit. One rainy afternoon, as we sketched by the lake, he said, "Your talent deserves to shine, Lila." His words a stark contrast to her neglect, igniting a spark of hope. The warmth of his acceptance eased my isolation, but it also highlighted Clara's absence, fueling my resolve to build a life where her disapproval didn't dictate my happiness. The city's rhythm, train whistles echoing, lake waves lapping, became a backdrop to this growing strength, a quiet promise of a future I could claim on my own terms. The family's dynamic grew more complex as the seasons shifted, a tension that tested my sense of belonging in our tight-knit circle. Our aunts and uncles, once neutral mediators, began aligning with Clara, their conversations at holiday gatherings revolving around her engagement to Ethan, my presence an afterthought as they sipped eggnog by the fireplace. One Thanksgiving, as the Chicago skyline glittered through the window, an uncle asked Clara about her wedding venue, ignoring my recent gallery feature that had earned local buzz. The bias stung, my attempts to contribute met with polite but dismissive nods, and I felt the family drift toward her carefully curated story. The strain was a quiet ache, my trust in their love wavering under the weight of their preference, and I began envisioning a future where I defined my worth, a resolve strengthening with each family meal spent on the periphery, my heart set on breaking free from her influence. My creative pursuits offered a refuge as the months wore on, a space to reclaim my voice against Clara's silence and Tony's shadow. I'd spend hours in my lakefront studio designing bold patterns that caught the eye of a local boutique, their interest a small victory that lifted my spirits with each sale. One evening, as the city lights danced on the lake, I finalized a collection inspired by my struggles, each stitch a defiance of her neglect, the fabrics a tapestry of my resilience. The work was grueling, my hands cramped from late nights, my eyes bleary from the dim light, but it sparked a flicker of pride, a counterpoint to her indifference that fueled my drive. The Chicago art scene, galleries in Pilsen with their eclectic displays, markets in Wicker Park buzzing with creativity, became my stage, and I started plotting a life where her shadow didn't dim my light, a quiet rebellion taking shape as I honed my craft and dreamed of a future beyond her reach. The emotional toll mounted as the first snow fell, a weight that tested my spirit in the frigid Chicago air. I'd see my reflection in the hallway mirror, a tiredness in my eyes and a slump in my shoulders. The strain of Clara's grudge etched into my face like the city's own weariness under the winter sky. One night, after a family dinner where she ignored my presence, I sat by the window, the Chicago skyline a distant comfort, feeling the burden of her distance like a heavy fog rolling in from the lake. My appetite waned, meals left cold as anxiety knotted my stomach, a tightness that kept me awake, and I leaned on herbal tea, the steam a fleeting solace against the urban din that seeped through the walls. The isolation fueled my determination, and I began sketching plans to rise above, the betrayal of Tony's confession and Clara's coldness forging a strength I hadn't fully grasped, a fight brewing against the sister who'd turned her back on me with unfounded blame. By the time spring rain washed over Chicago, the growing divide had left me battered but unbowed. My family trust eroded by her distance, my isolation deepened by ignored milestones, my sibling dynamic strained by parental bias. Clara's silent grudge, rooted in Tony's betrayal, had built a wall around me. Yet within those cracks grew a resolve I hadn't fully embraced. I'd stand on the balcony, the city lights a faint promise against the rain-streaked glass, plotting to end this rift. The pain of her rejection, the loneliness of her absence, the burden of her misplaced anger, they were shaping a strength, a rebellion against the sister who'd nearly undone me with Tony's shadow. That strength would soon erupt, a fight I'd carry forward to force her regret, a journey I was only beginning to understand. The struggle to reclaim my worth against Clara's dominance had deepened over the years, a resentment that cast a long, unyielding shadow over my life in the heart of Chicago. The lakefront apartment, with its tall windows framing the Chicago skyline and the gentle patter of rain against the glass, had become my sanctuary where I tried to shield myself from her growing hostility, but the peace I'd fought to maintain was slipping through my fingers like sand. The tension I spoke of had taken root long ago, and now, as her blame for Tony's departure sharpened into a bitter edge that cut through our family ties, I built a life with James's support, my mind turning toward confronting the silence that defined our fractured bond. The challenges ahead pressed heavily on my thoughts, shaping my resolve as I navigated the city's relentless rhythm and the weight of her accusations. It started over the years, a slow escalation that wove itself into the fabric of our Chicago existence, driven by Clara's unwavering belief that I'd sabotaged her happiness with Tony. After his breakup, her resentment grew into a quiet storm, her whispers to family members painting me as the architect of her failed engagement, a narrative she clung to with fierce determination. One rainy afternoon, as I strolled along the Lake Michigan shore with a close friend, the gray waves mirroring my mood, she overheard Clara telling an aunt, "Lila's the reason Tony walked away," a lie that spread like ripples across the water, distorting the truth. The gossip damaged my social circle, friends pulling back with awkward smiles at gatherings near the Art Institute, their trust in me shaken by her distorted story, their invitations to art openings or casual brunches replaced by hesitant excuses. I felt the sting of isolation, my reputation tarnished as her words painted me as untrustworthy, leaving me to question my place among those I'd once considered allies, my thoughts drifting toward finding a way to restore my standing and silence her slander. James's neutrality created unease between us over the next few months, a tension that tested the fragile foundation of our growing relationship. He'd entered my life at a design workshop in the Loop, his quiet encouragement a balm to my wounds. But he remained cautious about Clara, aware of her significant role in my family dynamics. One evening, as we shared coffee by the Chicago River, the water reflecting the city lights in a shimmering dance, he said, "I'd rather not get involved in your family issues," his tone neutral as he stirred his drink, his eyes avoiding mine. His reluctance to fully support me against her left a chill, a distance that widened when he declined invitations to family events where Clara might appear, his diplomacy a stark contrast to my desperate need for a steadfast ally in this battle. The unease gnawed at me, my trust in him wavering as I faced her hostility alone, my mind racing with doubts about his commitment. Yet I began imagining how his presence could bolster my resolve if he chose to stand with me, a quiet hope flickering amid the uncertainty. Emotional fatigue from her grudge wore me down as the seasons changed, exhaustion that seeped into every corner of my daily life and clouded my spirit. Clara's persistent blame, echoed in the hushed tones of family gatherings, drained my energy, her cold stares at holiday dinners in our lakefront apartment, a constant reminder of her unyielding anger that hung like a fog in the room. One crisp fall day, after she brushed off my attempt to reconcile during a Thanksgiving feast, the aroma of roasted turkey unable to lift my mood, I felt a heaviness settle over me, my vitality sapped by the weight of her resentment that lingered in every glance. The fatigue was a quiet companion, my sleep disrupted by endless replays of her accusations, my dreams haunted by her disapproving face, and I leaned on long walks along the lake to clear my mind, the Chicago skyline a distant solace against the gray autumn sky. The strain tested my resilience, my patience thinning as I bore the burden of her grudge, my thoughts turning to how I might confront her silence and reclaim my peace, a plan forming with each weary step through the city's carpet of fallen leaves. Her rumors took a darker turn over the next few years, a calculated campaign that isolated me further within our social web and deepened my sense of betrayal. Clara began spreading tales that I'd encouraged Tony's attention with calculated intent, her words reaching cousins who'd once been my confidants during summer barbecues by the lake. One winter evening, at a family skating party near Millennium Park, the ice glistening under the twinkling lights, a cousin pulled me aside, whispering, "Clara says you led Tony on with a smile," her eyes filled with doubt that cut through the festive air. The accusations stung, my social circle shrinking as friends distanced themselves, their invitations to gallery openings or cozy dinners replaced by polite excuses or awkward silences at local cafes, their trust eroded by her narrative. I felt the weight of her lies, my reputation tarnished as a homewrecker in their eyes, and I retreated to my art, sketching bold designs to reclaim my identity amid the snow-dusted streets, the cold air a mirror to my solitude. The city's winter chill amplified my isolation, my mind wrestling with how to counter her influence, a resolve taking shape as I navigated the whispers and sought to rebuild my connections with those who mattered. James's growing presence offered a glimmer of hope amid this darkness, a contrast to Clara's unrelenting shadow that loomed over my every step. Our relationship deepened, his encouragement at my design, projects a lifeline that pulled me from despair, and we'd spend evenings at jazz clubs in the South Loop, his laughter a balm to my wounds as the smooth saxophone filled the air with warmth. One snowy afternoon, as we browsed the Christkindl market, the scent of mulled wine and roasted chestnuts surrounding us, he gifted me a sketchbook, saying, "Keep creating, you're iwettable, Lila." His words a stark contrast to Clara's neglect that echoed in my memory like a bitter refrain. The warmth of his support eased my isolation, his presence a steady anchor, but it also underscored her absence, fueling my resolve to build a life where her disapproval didn't dictate my happiness or dictate the terms of my existence. The city's festive pulse, holiday lights strung across Michigan Avenue, carolers harmonizing in the streets, became a backdrop to this growing strength, my thoughts drifting toward a future where I could stand tall despite her grudge, a quiet determination taking root. The family's tension escalated as the months wore on, a divide that tested my sense of belonging within our once close circle and challenged my emotional endurance. Our aunts and uncles, once neutral voices in our family chorus, began echoing Clara's sentiments, their conversations at summer barbecues near the lakefront revolving around her engagement to Ethan, my presence an afterthought as they flipped burgers and swapped stories under the sun. One July day, an aunt asked Clara about her wedding dress, the fabric details drawing oohs and ahs, while ignoring my mention of a design award that had earned local praise. Her dismissal a quiet blow that left a bitter taste. The bias hurt. My attempts to share my progress met with polite but dismissive nods, the clatter of plates a backdrop to my exclusion, and I felt the family drift toward her carefully curated story, their preference a weight on my shoulders that grew heavier with each gathering. The strain was a constant ache, my trust in their love eroding under the pressure of their alignment with her narrative, my mind turning to a future where I could define my worth beyond her shadow, a resolve strengthening with each family meal spent on the margins of their affection. My art became a sanctuary as the seasons turned, a space to reclaim my voice against Clara's persistent blame and the echoes of her accusations. I'd spend hours in my lakefront studio, crafting intricate patterns that caught the eye of a downtown boutique, their order a small victory that lifted my spirits with each sketch completed and shipped off. One evening, as the Chicago lights danced on the lake, the reflection a kaleidoscope of colors, I finalized a collection inspired by my resilience, each fabric a defiance of her neglect, the colors a reflection of my inner fight against her shadow that seemed to linger in every corner. The work was grueling, my fingers aching from late-night stitching, my eyes bleary from the dim light of my desk lamp, my back stiff from hours bent over the sewing machine, but it sparked a flicker of pride, a counterpoint to her indifference that fueled my drive to create something lasting. The Chicago art scene, galleries in Pilsen with their eclectic displays of local talent, markets in Wicker Park buzzing with creativity and the chatter of eager buyers, became my stage, my thoughts focusing on a life where her influence couldn't dim my light. A quiet resolve taking shape as I honed my craft and planned my next steps to break free from her grip. The emotional toll mounted as the first spring rains fell, a weight that pressed on my spirit in Chicago's damp air, a constant reminder of the battles I faced, I'd catch my reflection in the hallway mirror, a weariness in my eyes and a slump in my shoulders. The strain of Clara's grudge etched into my face like the city's own resilience under the gray, rain-soaked sky. One night, after a family brunch where she avoided my gaze, the clink of coffee cups a hollow sound, I sat by the window, the Chicago skyline a distant comfort, feeling the burden of her resentment like a heavy mist rolling in from the lake, obscuring my view. My appetite waned, meals left cold as anxiety knotted my stomach, a tightness that kept me awake with restless thoughts, and I leaned on herbal tea, the steam a fleeting solace against the urban din that seeped through the walls and into my dreams. The isolation fueled my determination, my mind racing with plans to confront her silence. The betrayal of her blame forging a strength I was beginning to embrace as I navigated the rainy streets, my resolve hardening with each drop that fell. The community's subtle shift added to my struggle over the next few months, a ripple effect of Clara's influence that tested my resilience and pushed my limits. At a neighborhood festival in Logan Square, a friend hesitated to join me for a drink, the aroma of street food filling the air, murmuring, "Clara's been talking about you," her withdrawal a sharp sting that left me standing alone. The gossip spread, reaching my art circle, where a peer declined a collaboration over a shared project, citing family complications with a nervous laugh that echoed in the studio. The isolation grew, my social standing wavering as her words shaped perceptions among the vendors, artists, and neighbors, and I felt the city's vibrant pulse, street performers juggling under the L tracks, lakefront joggers passing with determined strides, turn into a stage for my vulnerability, a spotlight I didn't want. The strain was a quiet burden, my thoughts turning to how I might counter her narrative, a resolve taking shape as I walked the crowded sidewalks and planned to reclaim my place among those who'd once embraced me. The pressure from Clara's allies intensified as the summer heat approached, a new layer of challenge that tested my endurance in the urban heat. Her friends, loyal to her cause, began subtle jabs at community events, one suggesting I'd always been trouble during a park cleanup, the rustle of leaves a backdrop to her words. The remarks stung. My attempts to defend myself met with raised eyebrows and dismissive shrugs, and I felt the weight of their alliance with her, my social ties fraying under the pressure of their collective scorn. The city's summer buzz, fireworks bursting over the lake, crowded beaches filled with laughter, amplified my sense of being targeted, my mind wrestling with how to rise above, a quiet strength building as I sought to silence their voices and confront her grudge with a plan that grew clearer with each humid day. The workplace tension added another dimension to my struggle over the next few weeks, a ripple from Clara's influence that reached beyond family. A colleague, aware of the family rift, hesitated to include me in a design pitch, murmuring, "Let's keep this neutral," the hesitation a sting in the bustling office near the Loop. The exclusion hurt, my professional network wavering as her narrative seeped into my career, and I felt the weight of her shadow even there. The city's corporate pulse, skyscrapers gleaming, coffee shops humming, reflected my isolation, my thoughts turning to how I might prove my worth, a resolve taking shape as I worked late nights to strengthen my portfolio and counter her reach. By the time summer heat blanketed Chicago, the deepening resentment had left me weary but determined. My social circle damaged by her gossip, my relationship strained by James's neutrality, my emotional energy sapped by her grudge. These challenges shaped my thoughts and fueled my resolve. I'd stand on the balcony, the city lights a faint promise against the humid air, my mind turning to confront her silence and reclaim my peace. The pain of her blame, the loneliness of her rejection, the burden of her narrative, they were forging a path forward, a journey to redefine my worth against her shadow, a struggle that continued to evolve with each passing day. The resolve to reclaim my worth against Clara's dominance had reached a boiling point, an explosion that erupted at her engagement dinner, shattering the fragile piece of my life in Chicago. The lakefront apartment, with its warm glow softening the edges of the city's chaos, and the Chicago skyline a silent sentinel through the windows, had been my refuge. But the journey I spoke of had pushed me to a precipice where her hostility demanded a response. The strength I'd built from her past actions had grown into a quiet fire, and now, as her accusation at the dinner ignited a storm within me, I walked out with James, her boss, by my side, her defiance only deepening my sorrow as the fallout rippled across the city's vibrant landscape. It began at Clara's engagement, a crisp autumn evening a few days before the family holiday season, when the tension in our household reached its peak during a grand dinner at our parents' lakefront home. The occasion was a celebration of her union with Ethan, the dining room transformed with elegant floral centerpieces and the hum of conversation from our extended family, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, mingling with Ethan's relatives, including his parents, siblings, and a host of aunts and uncles who filled the space with their laughter. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, the Chicago skyline glittering through the large windows, casting a golden hue over the table, until Ethan turned to me with a warm, genuine smile, suggesting, "Lila, James, let's meet up before the wedding. Get to know each other better over coffee or a walk." I nodded, my heart lifting at the prospect of mending family ties, but Clara's face darkened, her silence a prelude to the chaos about to unfold. Suddenly, she slammed her fork down, the clatter echoing, and her voice cut through the chatter, "You'll steal my fiancé too!" A venomous accusation that silenced the room, her eyes blazing with years of pent-up rage directed squarely at me. The words struck me like a thunderclap, my heart racing as I felt the weight of her unfounded claim. A lie built on her past with Tony resurfacing in this public arena to humiliate me. I stood, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and hurt, the table's eyes turning to me, and faced her across the polished wood. "That's not true, Clara," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside, the taste of betrayal bitter on my tongue. "I've never wanted Ethan, and you know I rejected Tony for your sake." She scoffed, leaning forward with a sneer. "You think you're innocent? You've always coveted what's mine, waiting for your chance." The pressure mounted as her allies, two of her closest friends seated nearby, their faces alight with agreement, nodded and began whispering lies that I'd flirted with Ethan behind her back, their voices a chorus of condemnation that isolated me further. The room's tension grew palpable, my family's shocked stares and Ethan's relatives' murmurs adding to my shame, and I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, my confidence crumbling under their collective judgment. Ethan's family turned against me over the next few moments, their initial warmth replaced by a cold wave of suspicion that swept through the gathering. His mother, a stern figure in a pearl necklace, leaned toward her husband, her voice low but audible. "Is this true about Lila and Ethan?" His father's frown deepened, a shadow crossing his face, and his siblings exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier friendliness replaced by a frosty distance that chilled the air. I tried to explain, my voice shaking slightly. "It's a misunderstanding. I've done nothing." But Ethan's aunt cut in sharply. "We don't need this kind of drama in our family," her tone dismissive as she turned away. The rejection stung. My attempts to defend myself met with folded arms and averted gazes, and I felt their alliance with Clara solidify, a wall of hostility that left me stranded at the edge of the room. The Chicago skyline outside the window seemed to mock my isolation, its lights a distant reminder of the life I was losing, and my thoughts turned to escaping this humiliation, a quiet resolve forming amid the chaos of clinking glasses and stifled whispers. Public scrutiny intensified my shame as the dinner spiraled into a spectacle. A spotlight I couldn't escape that burned into my soul. Guests began whispering, their heads bent together as the accusations spread like wildfire, and I caught snippets, like, "She's always been trouble," from an uncle near the buffet, his voice carrying over the soft hum of background music. The humiliation seared my skin, my cheeks flushing a deep red as I stood exposed. The clink of wine glasses and the rustle of napkins, a stark contrast to the tension that gripped the room. A cousin from Ethan's side approached, his steps deliberate, asking, "What's this about stealing fiancés, Lila?" His voice laced with judgment that echoed in my ears, and I felt the weight of their stares, the city's vibrant energy turning into a stage for my vulnerability under the chandelier's harsh light. My mind raced with embarrassment, my confidence shaken to its core, and I sought a way to retreat, my thoughts fixating on how to reclaim my dignity from this public ordeal that seemed to stretch endlessly before me. James's presence offered a lifeline in that harrowing moment, a strength I hadn't fully realized until his voice broke through the noise. He stood beside me, his hand brushing mine with a reassuring touch, and said, "Lila, let's get out of here." His voice calm but firm, a beacon in the storm. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes as the weight of the evening pressed down, and as we moved toward the door, Clara's eyes widened, her friends gasping in unison, their shock palpable. "Wait, who is he?" she demanded, her tone shifting from rage to uncertainty, her posture stiffening. James turned, his posture authoritative and unyielding, and revealed, "I'm her boyfriend, and your boss at the firm," his words dropping like a stone into the silence, the room holding its breath. Clara's face paled, her defiance flaring as she snapped, "You can't use that against me." But the damage was irreversible, her authority undermined in front of everyone. My heart sank, sadness washing over me as I saw her resentment deepen, her refusal to back down a bitter pill that left me questioning our bond, my thoughts swirling with grief and a growing determination to move forward. A few days later, the fallout intensified, a wave of pressure that deepened my isolation and tested my resolve. Clara's allies, emboldened by her stance, called my parents with insistent tones, their voices dripping with accusation. "Lila's the problem. She should apologize to smooth things over." My aunts joined the chorus, their disappointment ringing through the phone lines. "You've embarrassed us all with that scene." Their words a heavy burden. The isolation grew, my heart heavy as I walked the lakefront path alone. The city's pulse a lonely beat against the lapping waves, and I felt the weight of their judgment pressing down, a loneliness that fueled my resolve to stand firm against their narrative. My thoughts turned to James, his revelation a double-edged sword that both empowered and unsettled me. And I wondered how to navigate this new tension with him and the family. James's initial silence strained our trust over the next week, a crack in our bond that widened with each quiet, tense moment. He returned home that night after the dinner, his face etched with concern as he set his coat aside and murmured, "I didn't mean to escalate it that way," his tone hesitant as we stood in the living room, the hum of the city filtering through the open window. I nodded, the sting of his caution cutting deep into my resolve, and replied, "You didn't have to stay so neutral." My voice soft but firm, the hurt evident. His reluctance to fully confront Clara left a chill between us, a distance that grew as we avoided the topic over breakfast, the clatter of dishes a stark reminder of our unspoken rift, my trust in him wavering under the strain. The ache was constant, and I began imagining a future where his support could heal this fracture, my thoughts drifting to how to rebuild our connection amid this turmoil. Public embarrassment lingered as the days passed, a shadow that darkened my social world and tested my emotional endurance. At a community event near the Chicago River, a neighbor approached with a cautious smile, whispering, Heard about the dinner drama with your sister. Her eyes curious and judgmental, the rumor spreading among acquaintances like a persistent fog. At work, a colleague hinted during a break, "Family issues can be tough, huh?" Their sympathy tinged with a probing edge that left me uneasy. The shame burned, my cheeks flushing as I navigated the L train, the stares of strangers a constant reminder of my exposure. And I felt the city's vibrant energy, street vendors calling, buses rumbling, turn against me with every stop. My mind wrestled with the humiliation, my confidence shaken, and I sought solace in my art, my thoughts turning to how to rise above this public ordeal that seemed to linger in every corner of my daily life. The kids' confusion added to my burden over the next few days, a weight that tugged at my heart and complicated my emotional landscape. Sophie and Liam, sensing the shift in our family dynamic, asked, "Did we do something wrong with Aunt Clara?" As they played with blocks on the living room floor, their innocent faces clouded with worry, the soft clatter of toys a stark contrast to my inner turmoil. I reassured them, "This isn't your fault, my loves," but the uncertainty lingered in their eyes, a burden as I tucked them in with extra stories, my voice steady despite the ache. The next day, Liam clung to my leg, whispering, "I miss her visits," and I hugged him tight, feeling the strain of their confusion and the guilt that gnawed at me for their lost connection. The city's noise, traffic hum, distant sirens amplified my isolation, my thoughts focusing on protecting them from this fallout and finding a way to shield their innocence from Clara's wrath. Clara's resistance grew as the week progressed, her defiance a bitter undercurrent that refused to relent. She called James late one night, her voice sharp over the phone as I overheard, "This won't affect my job, you can't hold this over me," her demand a challenge to his authority. He remained firm, replying, "It's your actions that matter, not my position," his tone unyielding. But her refusal to apologize deepened my sorrow, her resentment a wall I couldn't breach despite my efforts. The Chicago skyline outside my window seemed to reflect her unyielding stance, its lights a cold reminder of her anger, and I felt a mix of sadness and determination, my thoughts turning to how to move past her hostility and reclaim my peace in the face of her stubborn pride. The workplace ripple reached me a short time later, a new layer of tension that seeped into my professional life. A coworker approached during a quiet moment in the office near the Loop, asking, "Is Clara okay at the firm after that dinner?" Their curiosity a hint of her struggle under James's oversight, and I felt the weight of her influence lingering even there. Another colleague avoided eye contact, murmuring about family drama, their hesitation a sting that echoed in the bustling space. The city's corporate pulse, skyscrapers gleaming with ambition, coffee shops humming with conversation, amplified my unease, my thoughts focusing on maintaining my own path amid her shadow, a resolve taking shape as I worked to prove my worth despite the whispers. The emotional toll grew as the days stretched into a week, a burden that pressed on my spirit with increasing intensity. I'd catch my reflection in the hallway mirror, a weariness in my eyes and a slump in my shoulders, the strain of Clara's actions etched into my face like the city's own resilience under the spring sky. One night, after soothing Liam's fears with a gentle story, I sat by the window, the Chicago skyline a distant comfort, feeling the weight of her cruelty like a heavy fog rolling in from the lake. My appetite faded, meals left cold as anxiety knotted my stomach, a tightness that kept me awake, and I leaned on chamomile tea, the steam a fleeting solace against the urban din that seeped through the walls. The isolation fueled my determination, my mind racing with plans to confront her silence, the betrayal of her blame forging a strength I was beginning to harness as I navigated the rainy streets. By the time spring blossoms dotted Chicago, the engagement explosion had left me shaken but resolute. The Allies' lies, Ethan's family turn, the public shame. They were a triad of pain that shaped my thoughts and tested my spirit. I'd sit with Sophie and Liam, their laughter over a game a flicker of hope, planning to stand tall against Clara's defiance. Her resentment lingered, a bitter undercurrent, but my journey was just beginning to unfold, my resolve hardening with each step forward in the face of her unyielding stance. The journey to reclaim my worth against Clara's dominance had evolved into a quiet resistance after the engagement dinner, a transformative phase that reshaped my existence in the heart of Chicago. The lakefront apartment, with its warm hearth casting a gentle glow across the room and the Chicago skyline a steadfast companion through the tall windows, had become my fortress, where I drew strength from James and nurtured Sophie and Liam through the lingering echoes of her hostility. The resolve I'd cultivated from her past actions had matured into a steady determination, and now, as her immediate pressure faded and her own struggles with work and finances surfaced, I thrived with James's unwavering support, offering help that began to soften her animosity, though her unease lingered as a subtle undercurrent in our strained family ties. It began after the walkout, a few days into the heavy silence that settled over my life following my departure from Clara's engagement dinner, when her relentless demands seemed to dissipate like the morning mist over Lake Michigan. The fallout had created a strange calm, her allies' calls to my parents growing sporadic, but I soon learned of her own unraveling, whispers of workplace difficulties and financial strain reaching me through a distant cousin during a quiet phone call. One evening, as I sat with James on our balcony, the city lights twinkling like stars below, he shared, "Clara's been struggling at the firm since that night. Her projects are stalling," his voice low, hinting at the repercussions of his revelation as her boss. The shift intrigued me, my thoughts turning to how her life was beginning to mirror the chaos she'd inflicted, yet I focused on my own path, securing a freelance design contract with a trendy downtown boutique that boosted my confidence and filled my days with purpose. The city's pulse, distant train whistles, the soft hum of the L, became a backdrop to my growing independence, a quiet strength taking hold as I set firm boundaries against the remnants of her past influence. False work rumors disrupted my focus over the next couple of weeks, a new challenge that tested my professional resolve and shook my sense of stability. At my design studio near the Loop, a colleague approached with a hesitant smile during a break, saying, "I heard you caused a scene at Clara's dinner. Is that true?" The rumor spreading like wildfire among my peers, their whispers filling the air with doubt. The accusations stung, my concentration faltering as I tried to sketch new patterns, the rhythmic hum of sewing machines a constant distraction that frayed my nerves. Clients began asking subtle questions during meetings, their trust wavering as they hesitated over contracts, and I felt the weight of her shadow creeping into my career, a burden that left me questioning my standing in the creative community. The Chicago skyline, visible through the office window, seemed to judge my every move with its towering presence, and I leaned on late nights to prove my worth, my hands cramping as I worked, my thoughts fixating on overcoming this setback with each meticulous stitch I completed under the dim office lights. Family demands tested my boundaries as the months progressed, a persistent pressure that pushed against the walls I'd carefully constructed to protect my peace. My aunts, still clinging to their allegiance with Clara, called with insistent pleas, their voices a mix of guilt and expectation. "You should reach out to her. She's your sister after all." The words echoing in our lakefront apartment during quiet evenings. My parents, though supportive in their silence on the matter, hinted at reconciliation during Sunday dinners, their concern a subtle nudge as the clatter of dishes and the aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, their divided loyalty a gentle but persistent prod. The demands wore on me, my resolve to maintain distance wavering under their emotional appeals, the weight of their expectations pressing down as I cleared the table alone. The city's rhythm, lakefront joggers passing with determined strides, street vendors calling out their wares, amplified my isolation, my thoughts turning to how to protect my newfound peace while navigating their well-meaning but misguided suggestions. A quiet determination, growing with each family call I politely declined. Clara's pleas added emotional strain a short time later, an unexpected turn that complicated my resolve and tugged at my heartstrings. One afternoon, as I worked on a vibrant new design in my studio, the hum of my sewing machine a steady companion, she called, her voice shaky and uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Lila, I'm drowning in bills. Can you and James help me out?" The request caught me off guard, her pride clearly wounded after years of holding herself above me. And I hesitated, the memory of her accusation still a fresh wound. James, overhearing from the kitchen, suggested with a thoughtful nod, "We could assist, but with clear conditions to protect you," his support a lifeline in this dilemma. I agreed, arranging a modest loan through him, ensuring it came with boundaries, but her gratitude was tinged with awkwardness, her unease palpable even over the phone as she stammered her thanks. The strain deepened, my emotions torn between a flicker of compassion for her plight and the hurt she'd inflicted, and I began imagining how this help might shift our dynamic, my thoughts drifting to a future where her struggles might lead to a reluctant reconciliation. Her work difficulties became evident over the next few months, a consequence of James's influence that added a layer of complexity to her plight and my response. At the firm where James served as her boss, Clara faced demotions and stalled projects, a fact he shared with a heavy sigh during a quiet dinner at our apartment, the clink of forks against plates underscoring his words. "She's not performing well. Her team's losing confidence," he admitted, the weight of his position as her superior clear in his furrowed brow. I felt a mix of sympathy for her fall from grace and a quiet satisfaction that her actions were catching up, my thoughts turning to how her career struggles mirrored the judgment she'd once cast on me. The Chicago skyline, visible from our dining table, seemed to reflect her decline with its stoic presence, and I began considering how our help might alter her perspective, a quiet plan forming as I balanced my emotions and weighed the impact of our assistance. Financial woes compounded her troubles, a burden that brought her closer to seeking our aid and revealed her vulnerability. Rumors reached me through a family friend that Clara's savings were dwindling, her engagement expenses and lost income straining her budget to a breaking point, a vulnerability she'd once hidden behind her pride. One evening, as I reviewed my finances with James in the soft light of our living room, the city lights casting shadows on the walls, he proposed with a thoughtful glance, "We could cover some of her costs discreetly, keep it low-key," his generosity a stark contrast to her past coldness toward me. I agreed, arranging support through a neutral financial channel to maintain distance. But her acceptance came with reluctance, her pride a fragile barrier, as she muttered her thanks with a strained voice. The emotional toll was heavy, my thoughts wrestling with the irony of aiding her after her attacks, a resolve strengthening as I navigated this complex support and considered its potential to shift her stance. James's support deepened our bond as I faced these multifaceted challenges, a pillar that upheld my quiet resistance with unwavering strength. He took time to assist with my designs, his encouragement a steady hand during late nights in the studio, the rustle of fabric a comforting sound, and we'd walk the lakefront together, his presence a solace against the city's noise. One sunny afternoon, as we picnicked in Grant Park, the green expanse alive with families, he said, "You're stronger than this, Lila, and I'm here." His words a boost to my spirit as the breeze carried his voice. The city's pulse, street musicians playing soulful tunes, lake waves lapping at the shore, reflected our unity, and I began envisioning a future where her influence faded into the background, my thoughts turning to how his support could guide my next steps toward a life defined by my own terms. My career flourished despite the rumors, a quiet victory that bolstered my resolve and filled me with pride. The design contract expanded into a series of commissions, my work featured in a local magazine with a glossy spread, and I felt a surge of accomplishment as I held the issue in my hands. The Chicago art scene, galleries in Pilsen with their eclectic displays of local talent, markets in Wicker Park buzzing with creativity and the chatter of eager buyers, became my stage, my thoughts focusing on proving my worth beyond her shadow, a plan taking shape as I embraced this success and showcased my resilience. The recognition brought new clients, their praise a balm to the wounds of her past, and I began to see a path forward where her narrative no longer held sway. The emotional strain persisted as the seasons shifted, a weight I learned to carry with growing confidence. I'd see my reflection in the hallway mirror, the strain etched into my face like the city's own character under the changing sky, and sit by the window during quiet moments, the Chicago lights a distant comfort against the dusk. My appetite returned with James's steady presence, meals shared with laughter around the dining table as anxiety faded into a manageable hum, and I leaned on meditation in a nearby park, the calm a contrast to past turmoil that eased my mind and body. The isolation from Clara's world, once a wound, now fueled my independence, my thoughts turning to a future where her struggles might lead to a tentative peace, a resolve strengthening as I embraced my newfound strength. Clara's unease grew with our help, a subtle shift in her demeanor that marked a change in our dynamic. Her calls became rarer, her gratitude awkward and stilted during brief conversations, and I felt the distance widen as she avoided family gatherings, her pride a fragile shield. The city's rhythm, train whistles echoing through the night, the lake lapping gently at the shore, amplified this change, my thoughts focusing on maintaining boundaries as her animosity faded into a quiet embarrassment that kept her at arm's length. The assistance we provided seemed to soften her edge, yet her reluctance to face me directly lingered, a tension that shaped my resolve to move forward without relying on her approval. The community's response shifted subtly over the next few weeks, a reflection of Clara's declining influence that bolstered my stand. At a local art fair in Logan Square, a vendor who'd once sided with her approached with a sheepish grin, saying, "I misjudged you, Lila." Their change of heart a small victory. The gossip that had once fueled my isolation began to turn, with whispers of Clara's the one struggling now, circulating among neighbors, and I felt a shift in the air, a growing respect that undermined her past dominance. The city's social fabric, community gardens blooming, street festivals alive with music, reflected this support, my thoughts turning to how this could reinforce my position, a quiet plan taking shape as I navigated this newfound alliance. By the time autumn leaves fell in Chicago, the quiet resistance had left me stronger and more determined. The false rumors that disrupted my work, the family demands that tested my limits, Clara's pleas that strained my emotions, they were a triad of challenges that shaped my resolve and fueled my growth. I'd sit with James in the evenings, our plans for the future a source of hope, my journey unfolding with each step forward as I embraced my independence. The path ahead was clear, my thoughts focused on thriving despite the shadows of the past, a resolve that continued to build with every passing day. The resolve to reclaim my worth against Clara's dominance had blossomed into a triumph of regret, a victory that unfolded over the next year, reshaping my life amid Chicago's vibrant pulse. The lakefront apartment, with its cozy hearth casting a warm glow across the living space and the Chicago skyline, a steadfast companion through the windows, had become a sanctuary where I thrived with James, Sophie, and Liam, the echoes of her past hostility fading into a distant memory. The strength I'd built from our fractured bond had matured into a powerful force, and now, as I advanced my career with dedication and nurtured my family with love, Clara faced the weight of her actions, her regret and admiration surfacing despite our rare encounters in the city. It began over the next year, a season of renewal amid Chicago's bustling streets, where I poured my energy into my design career with a renewed sense of purpose. My clothing line, inspired by resilience, took shape during late-night sessions in my home studio, the sewing machine's hum a steady companion against the city's night sounds. The debut, held in a Michigan Avenue gallery, drew influencers and buyers, their applause a thrill as I showcased my designs, each piece a reflection of my journey. James stood beside me, his pride evident in his smile, while Sophie and Liam cheered with handmade signs. The celebration moved to our apartment, where my parents brought pierogi, their warmth contrasting Clara's absence. The city's energy, Wicker Park festivals, DuSable Bridge chimes, mirrored my rise, and I felt unshackled, my thoughts turning to a future built on my terms. Months later, my career soared, a testament to my growth and perseverance. The clothing line expanded into a recognized brand, featured in a Chicago magazine, and I felt pride as I held the issue. The launch party on the Magnificent Mile drew designers and media. My speech on overcoming challenges earning praise. Chicago's fashion scene, West Loop shows, River North shops, became my stage, my thoughts focusing on redefining my narrative, a plan forming to leave her shadow behind. The kids' growth brought joy, healing the past's wounds. Sophie's dance recital at a local studio drew cheers, her grace captivating. Liam's coding app, showcased at a school fair, thrilled us with ice cream celebrations. I attended every event, their pride, Sophie's note, Liam's dedication, rewards for my journey. Chicago's family pulse, museums, parks, reflected their bloom, my thoughts building a future of love and stability. Community support grew, fortifying my victory. A Southside literacy event teacher said, "Your story lifts our kids," funding books. A neighborhood fair saw Sophie and Liam's duet shine, contrasting Clara's isolation. Chicago's fabric, Pilsen art, Andersonville festivals mirrored this, my thoughts cementing my stand, my confidence rising with each event. Clara's regret emerged a few months later, a subtle shift. A text read, "You've excelled, Lila, with respect." At a cousin's wedding, she nodded from afar, regret clear. Her pride lingered, but her admiration grew. Chicago's rhythm, L trains, lake breezes, highlighted our distance, my thoughts maintaining boundaries, a quiet victory unfolding. James's love deepened our bond, a foundation for my triumph. He supported my designs, our lakefront walks a solace. One park picnic, he said, "Your strength inspires me, boosting my spirit." Chicago's pulse, jazz, markets, reflected our unity, my thoughts planning a future of shared dreams. My emotional growth was a quiet revolution. I'd stand on the balcony, Chicago lights a hope, reflecting on my rise, confidence soaring. Meals with family eased stress, yoga brought calm, my thoughts seeing her regret as growth, my strength solidifying. Clara's transformation continued, her respect growing. Her calls were rare, her tones softer, and I felt her shift. Chicago's energy, train whistles, lake waves, amplified this, my thoughts focusing on peace, a victory shaping our dynamic. The family's warmth expanded, a new chapter. My aunt visited, sharing stories, and cousins joined for holidays, their laughter filling our home. Chicago's pulse, Diker Heights lights, Little Italy brunches, mirrored this, my thoughts building a chosen family, a triumph over her past. If I could advise, don't bear toxic siblings, set firm boundaries. Clara nearly broke me, but limits saved me. The lesson, leaving toxicity builds strength and respect. I chose peace over her approval. If this resonates, like and subscribe to explore more resilient stories. Thank you for your support, and remember that stepping away from those who doubt you lights the way to a life you'll treasure.